Hey, I'm Chris Ralph, and I'm doing a series of videos on the secrets of successful nugget detecting gold with your metal detector. This is a gold monster, but there's a lot of other great metal detectors out there that are good for detecting gold. And I'm going to go over some of the special secrets of how to be successful and find your own gold. Now, one of the things that I'm going to talk to you about today, and in fact the main thing I'm going to talk to you about today, is swinging slowly and listening for faint targets. You shouldn't be going real fast. Basically, you want to be going slowly over and listening for faint targets. I'm going to tell you a story. It's a great story, and it really illustrates this whole point to a perfect degree. I was watching TV at my house, maybe 5 years ago. It was a great thing. I watched it, and it was actually a story about guys that were metal detecting in Western Australia. I've been to Western Australia. I found some nice gold there. It's a good place to go look for gold. But there was a new guy. He had a good metal detector. It was a mine lab, and he had a friend who had let him camp on and prospect around a good area that produced some nice gold. And basically, he had worked around there for a couple weeks, and while he'd found a few pieces of trash, he hadn't found a single gold nugget. And he was kind of disappointed, and he was talking to the TV guys and telling them, you know, I've been out here for a while and I haven't found even one little gold nugget. So actually he called another friend that he knew who was an experienced prospector and had done a lot of work with metal detectors and finding gold. And he had the guy go out and he said, okay, let's go out here and give this a try. Let me watch you. I'm going to watch you, and if I have any hints or suggestions for you, I'll let you know. So the guy comes out and he starts detecting, and he's going over the ground, and he was swinging fairly slow. He was keeping his coil close to the ground, and I heard a little boop just as he was going, the little small signal. And it was obvious to me because I've used metal detectors and found gold before. Even I found gold in Western Australia. But there was a fairly weak signal, not a super tiny signal, but definitely on the weak side. And I jumped up and said, hey, that was a signal. And my wife laughs at me when I talk to the TV because she says only crazy people talk to the television. The television isn't listening. And I suppose she's probably right. Anyway, the friend who was there in the video with him said, okay, wait, stop. And the guy stopped and said, now go back about 10 feet. And the guy went backwards to where he'd been 10 feet before. He says, now go forward again slowly and listen for faint targets. And the guy went forward slowly, swinging his coil. And sure enough, when he got to that same spot, there was that little weak sound, weak target sound that the guy had basically walked right over and missed the first time. And he says, the guy stopped and said, did you hear that? And the guy said, yeah, now that I'm listening for it, I did hear it. And so, okay, dig that. And he dug it, and guess what? It was his first nugget. It was about a 1 gram nugget, nice nugget. And the whole secret was that he was listening for fainter targets. And I got to tell you, I get guys who contact me that say, hey Chris, it seems like all I ever find is nails and tin cans and other pieces of trash, big bullets and stuff. And I tell them, well, I can't tell you without going out there to test like the guy that I was recounting the story of in Australia. But a lot of guys, especially guys who've done coin hunting and that sort of thing in parks and schools, they train their ears not to hear small sounds. And if you're not listening for small sounds, you're going to miss most of the gold. In all honesty, yes, I've gone over big nuggets. I dug a 1 ounce plus nugget at 6 inches one time, and surprise, surprise, a 1 ounce nugget at 6 inches is a pretty loud signal. But Most of the gold I dig, especially in a place like a mine dump, is on the small side. And I'll tell you, in fact, most gold in mine dumps is small. That's why I brought you here today. It's why this is a good place to talk about listening for faint targets, because you know the gold in most mine dumps is not big. Now, yes, there's big pieces of gold that occur in quartz veins here and there. Yep, it exists. But for most of the targets in these mine dumps, they're pretty small. The targets that I dug today, all the targets were pretty small, but you know they will add up. I got 9 of them so far, and I'm gonna hunt some more this afternoon. So you know it adds up, the small pieces, and the small pieces are still exciting to find. So listen for those faint targets. Don't just walk over them. Coin guys, like I say, they train themselves not to hear small targets because they don't want to dig some little bit of aluminum can slaw in a park, you know, where a mower has gone over and chopped up aluminum cans into little tiny bits, or little bits of foil from gum wrappers or something like that. So they train themselves not to hear those little beep, beep, beep. They want to hear bop, you know, big loud sounds, because that's probably going to be a coin or something. So train your ear and listen when you're out prospecting. Listen for those faint signals, because sometimes the faint signals, you know, I've had faint signals that I dig down and dig down and dig down. One time I got a really faint signal and it was a 1/2 ounce nugget. So, but it was down quite a ways. More often though, it's smaller pieces of gold and they just have a small signal. So remember to do that when you're out prospecting.
Okay, I had a couple of other things that I also wanted to add to this video because they have to do with being able to listen to faint signals, being able to train yourself to hear those faint signals. And basically the point is that most gold is small, okay? There are big nuggets once in a while, but most gold is small, and even of the bigger pieces, a lot of times it's down deeper. So, you know, still got to hear faint signals. That's really a key. You know, in some places, really 75 or 80% of the targets are smallish and faint. In other places, it's 100%. So if you're not listening for faint signals, you're just not hearing it. You're just not hearing the gold. So it's an important thing for you to do, to keep your ear trained for those faint signals. Now, in order to do that, though, you must keep your detector quiet. Because if your detector is beeping and chirping and making all kinds of noise constantly all the time, how are you going to hear those faint signals? So what you got to do is quiet the thing down. Now, it doesn't mean that your detector has to be so silent that, you know, you basically can hear a pin drop, that it's 100% perfectly silent. It doesn't have to be that way. On the other hand, you don't want to go and beep, beep, boop, you know, making noise all the time. So what you're trying to do is get it to where the noise is a real minimum. Okay, and there's 2 things with most detectors that you really have to focus on to quiet the thing down to a reasonable level so that you can hear those faint signals. And the first one is keeping your detector properly ground balanced. Now, you know, ground balancing varies from place to place. There's a few places where you can set it and check it once or twice in a whole day and you really shouldn't have too much problems. On the other hand, there's places like this, in this picture, where the soil is red and full of iron and highly mineralized, and you're going to have to check it, you know, every few minutes instead of a couple of times a day. But you got to keep it ground balanced, and that's why detectors like the Gold Monster 1000 that I had, detectors that have an automatic ground balance mode, are a lot more convenient in areas with variable ground mineralization. So with automatic ground balance, you're constantly adjusting for that with the machine. But still, you can use ones with manual ground balance. You just have to be aware of it and make the adjustments. And one of the things is when you get trained on your detector and you've really been out there in a bunch of different places, you'll hear it starting to squawk more and make more noise, and you'll say, hey, this detector's getting out of balance because it's making a lot more noise. And so learn to do that. Learn to stay on top of it and keep your detector properly ground balanced. Now, ground balance, like I say, it has to be checked regularly, but there are always challenges. These are two chunks of magnetite from very different areas where I went prospecting. You can see one of them is very river rounded. Um, but they're both magnetite and they both scream on VLF type metal detectors as really loud targets. And so there's always challenges to keeping your detector properly ground balanced, but you have to focus on that. That's a real issue that you'll need to keep up with. Now, the other issue in keeping your detector quiet is also not turning up the gain too high. Most detectors have a gain setting, and that it doesn't change the amount of energy going into the ground, but it changes how much the detector amplifies the signal coming back to the coil. And if you make the coil more and more and more sensitive, you're going to get more and more ground noise. In fact, if you have your detector cranked up too high, you may get a falsing signal on every little rock or weed that you bump into as you swing the coil. It just starts getting really sensitive when you get it up to maximum gain. And one of the things that people need to understand, especially new prospectors, is that we're all used to televisions and radios and such things that if you turn the gain all the way down, you literally can't hear anything. And what detectors are set up as is they always have a minimum pretty good gain on the signal. And what you're adding with the gain setting is just on top of that base. So it's not like if you turn the gain down to the lowest setting, you won't be able to detect anything that's smaller than a bowling ball sized chunk of metal. No, it's not like that at all. The gain just adds you just a little bit more. So, going up 3 or 4 settings in the gain, but not all the way to the top, is usually a very good way of keeping your detector reasonably quiet when you're out there detecting. And you have to keep it, like I say, reasonably quiet so that when you are going across the faint signal, you'll hear it, that it will stand out from other beeps and chirps and other things like that. And one of the things that the new guys get frustrated with, they turn it up too loud and they don't keep their detector ground balanced, and then surprise, surprise, the detector just makes all kinds of racket, and the only thing they respond to or that they really hear is the really loud stuff. So let me just go over, and we're going to do a summary of this, summary of all these points that you can remember for when you're out detecting. This is the secrets of successful detecting, and it's a little summary. So rules to remember for finding more gold. When you're out there, think of this. 1. Most gold is small. Listen closely for those weak signals from your detector. Like I say, in a lot of places, if you're not listening to the weak signals, you're walking past 75 or 80% of the gold that you might otherwise be detecting. And some places it's even higher. In some places, if you don't listen to the weak signals, you're going to miss 100% of the gold. So this is a critical thing, is be able to hear faint signals, because just for a quick comparison, a nickel, which is a pretty standard signal that people might get in a park or a school or some other place where they're hunting with their detector, a nickel is the equivalent of a quarter-ounce nugget, and it will sound off like that. And so there just aren't that many near-surface quarter-ounce nuggets. And if you're going to be successful prospecting for gold with a metal detector, you're going to need to listen closely for weak signals. Okay, second, keep your detector quiet. That's what I've just been talking about a little bit. Be sure that it's properly ground balanced at all times. This requires regular checking. You can't just ground balance it when you head out in the morning and then figure it'll be good for all day. You need to be, at least at first, you might check it every 5 minutes or even less. And as you get experience with your detector, you'll be able to hear when the detector is starting to make more noise than it really should. And you'll say to yourself, oh, I've got to rebalance this thing. So keep checking your ground balance and keep it in balance. Like I say, the automatic features are very helpful in that regard. So, point 3, keep your detector quiet. Be sure not to turn up the gain too high. Again, I was just mentioning that a few minutes ago, but cranking up the gain too much is a common error made by new prospectors. It makes your detector noisy, and then you don't hear the fainter signals. So, and again, even if you turn the gain down to the minimum setting, it still is a pretty good gain. It's not like the volume on a television that you turn it down to 0 and there's a 0 volume. So it's different. And then finally, carefully check out any target that gives a repeatable signal, even if the signal is a weak one. You'll learn that sometimes you go over signals, and if you'll go over it just right, it'll be a little bit louder. Maybe as you're passing along, you get a weak signal. It's like, oh, wait, is that repeatable? And if you go back over it, it gives you the same signal again. Well, you know that there's something in the ground. It could be a hot rock, it could be a piece of trash, it could be a lot of things. But arbitrary stuff like bumping into a weed or a rock or that sort of stuff it doesn't give you a repeatable signal. So you need to check out repeatable signals where you can swing your coil over it the same way a second time and you get the same signal, even if the signal is a weak one. And like I say, if you fish around and find certain angles and that sort of thing, you'll often make that weak signal a little stronger. And then the next step is you scrape off the loose pebbles and maybe a half an inch or an inch of dirt off with your boot, and then you go over it again, and the signal should get even stronger, and you continue to dig down until you dig the target out of the ground, or you check it out with your discriminator and find that it's a piece of trash. So anyway, I hope that these rules to remember for finding more gold will help you get out and be more successful in your nugget detecting. Now, I've written a whole book about prospecting that really just gives a boatload of information about all kinds of prospecting, from, of course, metal detecting, which we've been talking about, but also sluicing, panning, how to find a good area, because boy, that's the real hardest part of successful nugget detecting, is even once you learn how to do it right, you need to find the good areas that have good gold that you can detect with your detector. So all that kind of information is in my book, and I'd like to tell you a little bit more about that right now. So also I want to mention my book, Fistful of Gold. If you have more interest in learning about how to find gold and be successful as a prospector, this is the source that you want to check out. Basically, my book is an encyclopedia of everything you need to know about prospecting, from panning, sluicing, metal detecting, dry washing, to geology of gold, and even how to stake a claim. It's basically everything you need to know about prospecting, and it's available now on Amazon. You just go to Amazon and look for Fistful of Gold by Chris Ralph, and I guarantee you'll find it. Also, I have my own website, and that's, of course, free. And for more free information, just go to nevadaoutbackgems.com/prospect/chrisprospect.htm. That's the URL for it, and it's got all kinds of information about prospecting and mining and the whole thing, everything you wanted to know, including some great history and locations of where you might want to prospect for gold. And finally, if you like this presentation and you want to learn more about finding your own gold, I promise that I've got quite a few more gold, silver, and gemstone videos coming that are on the way. A lot of exciting and interesting stuff, both in the form of live action videos as well as slide presentations. So be sure to click the subscribe button and the notification bell, and YouTube will let you know when I publish new stuff. And hit the like button as well, and feel free to comment or ask questions, and I promise to do my very best to answer any of your questions as best I can. So thanks a lot, and hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you again soon.